Everybody, it's Eugene Lee Show, and welcome to Forensics Talks. This is episode 68, and my guest is Najat Abou Chacra. She is an investigative judge with the military court in Lebanon, and she joined the Judicial Authority as an apprentice judge and permanent member of the courthouse in August 2001, and she became an accredited judge in September 2004. However, since October 2010, she's been an investigative judge at the military court in Beirut. She's worked on many terrorist cases like the sleeping cells case file of Ahmad al-Assir and another for Sajah al-Dulaimi. And she tells us about her work as a judge and especially the complex system of courts that are in Lebanon. Well, at least I think it's a little bit complex. But it's a rare opportunity to get some insight into how things work in Lebanon. And as an investigative judge, she gets directly involved in the case. She can interrogate witnesses, she can look for scientific information and work with scientific experts as well. Now, this is pre-recorded, and one of the benefits of doing this is that it frees us up to respond to comments and questions very quickly. So please tell us where you're from, go ahead and add your comments or questions, and we'll be watching alongside you so we can respond as best as we can. So let's get to it, and I hope you enjoy our talk. Najat, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right.
And to see you like this on screen instead of only LinkedIn messaging.
Yes, of course. And we sort of met through some of the posts you made on LinkedIn. And just so people know, you are coming to us from where?
I'm from Lebanon.
Right.
And I'm a judge in the military court, an investigative judge, because in Lebanon we have like a special judiciary system. It's very similar to the one in France. So whenever you have a penal procedure, it should start with the bureau of the prosecutor, then it goes to the bureau of the investigative judges, then it goes to the court. So The role of the investigative judges is to study the file case to see if the evidence that the general prosecutor, the evidence that he had collected, are they enough to say that this person should be prosecuted in front of the court? If yes, the file case will be sent to the court. If not, this person will be released. Of course, not for all cases, only the dangerous ones.
Okay. Well, you're jumping right in. So I wanted to ask about you, though. I wanted to ask a few things about yourself and how you got started even before. Sometimes there's our students and academics that are interested in maybe pursuing careers as judges and things like that. And so you had sort of an interesting path. So let's start before you were actually in school. So when you were very young, did you know you were going to be a judge? Were you very interested in this area? How did it happen for you?
Well, actually, no. I wasn't attached to law or to any of human studies, because when I was in my high school, I studied scientific because in Lebanon, by that time, in 1996, we had like 3 branches. You could go to math, science, or human studies. So I chose the science because I was planning to study pharmacy. And then from nowhere, my father said, what if you study law? Nobody in the family is a lawyer or a judge, and we need somebody to understand law. So I went to law school and I started my journey since 1996. I finished my BA at 2000. Then in 2002, I became a judge. And in Lebanon, we have the School of Judges where you have to spend 3 years. So I finished my School of Judges in 2004, because actually I started in 2001 and not 2002. In 2002, I got my diploma in law studies from my university, which is BAU, Beirut Arab University. And then I have moved and I was appointed in many courts in Lebanon. I have started in the south of Lebanon. Then I moved to Mountain of Lebanon in a court of Alay district. Then I went to the military court, and I'm there since 12 years now.
Okay.
And so as an investigative judge.
How does, so for example, in Lebanon, is there like an apprenticeship program for judges? Like how do you become officially a judge?
Yes, there are exams that you should pass. It's the Ministry of Justice and the High Judicial Council that announced that now we need such number of judges, like 20, 25, I don't know, a number of judges. So any person who has Bachelor of Law can apply to these exams. There are multiple exams, the number of 4. Some are written, some are oral, and you can have, or you should have a psychological test also. You should pass all these tests. If you succeed, you can move and go to the School of Judges, where you have to spend 3 years. You can have academic courses where you study and do your exams, and you should also go to courts to learn how to write the judges. You can go to different courts to just learn how the work goes in the courts. After 3 years, you will graduate, and then the government will appoint you in this or this court, such or such.
I see.
Court.
So is that when, like 2004, that's when you became accredited?
I finished, yes, the School of Judges in 2004. I went to work in the Court of South of Lebanon from 2004 to 2009. Then I moved to Alay district. I was a unique judge, because in Lebanon we have courts, we have unique judges. And I was a civil judge by then. So I came to Alay in 2009. Then suddenly in 2010, they appointed me in the military court as an investigative judge. So I had to work in Alay district and in the military court at the same time until 2017. Then in 2017, they put me only in the military court. I'm still there.
Oh, okay. Now,
because in Lebanon, we don't have a specialization. A judge is not specialized in this or this case. He should work everything. He should know about everything.
I see. Okay. But there's also, for example, so you're sort of a special case because you came through through the education and going that way, but they can also appoint like military people to be the judge as well, no?
Yes, because the military court is formed by military judges and civil judges. They are not like military judges. They are military officers with high ranks like lieutenant or captain or colonel or even general. So they should have a bachelor of law, and then they come to the military court to be judges. So actually they don't study to be a judge like us. That's why the law, to give more humanity and more civilization or civil spirit to the military court, they send to the military court civil judges like me. So if you will go to the military court now, you will see that all the general prosecutors are civil judges. All the investigative judges are civil judges. The head of the Court of Cassation in the military court is a civil judge by the law. And also there is one civil judge in the military tribunal, the permanent military tribunal. There should be one civil judge, and there will be 4 officers with him.
Okay. Now you had mentioned just before about the system that you have too,
yes.
And of course, Lebanon has a very, I would say, complicated history too. But can you tell us about some of the changes that happened back in the past, like around 1943?
Yes, Lebanon was occupied by France, and then we had our independence in 1946. But before that, in 1943, France decided to establish a military court in Lebanon like the military court in France. And the Lebanese law was actually the French law and the Ottoman law also in the same time, because also we were occupied by the Ottoman Sultan, so before, until 1918. So we had the military court, which was only specialized by when it was established. It looks only in the military crimes, like to leave the army, to lose your weapon, to run away in front of the enemy. These were only the military crimes. After that, in 1958, we had like a revolution in Lebanon. And by then the government made what we call the law of terrorism in January 11, 1958. And in that law, they wrote that the cases of terrorism will go to the military court. After that, in 1964 or 1958 also, we had the law of weapons, trafficking arms and burying arms. So they wrote also in this law that these cases will go to the military court. And after that, every 2-3 years, you will have a new law that will give more and more authority to the military court. Now we have a huge number of cases that go to the military court, or the military court is specialized to look in not only the military crimes. We have a big number of cases. I will list some of them. First, we have terrorism, finance of terrorism, espionage, treason, dealing with the enemy, arms, any attacks against the army, the ISF, I mean the internal security forces, or the general security or the security of state, or the crimes that are committed inside of the prisons, any crime that is attack, any crime that fall on a soldier in the army will come to the military court. So we have a huge authority actually now.
Yeah. So how many investigative judges are there? Because that's I mean, there's a lot of work to be done here. So
yes, but we are not a lot. We are a number of 6. And even if you look at it and you see that we have a huge number of cases that we are looking at, but the number of 6 is very enough until now.
So I'm interested in the actual court, because I'm thinking about what happens at court. How is the court like physically set up now? I'm just trying to imagine. Is it very similar to like a US criminal court, or is it similar to like a European court? What's it like?
Well, I don't know the US criminal courts. How does it look?
No, I mean, like in the actual courtroom itself, like the judge sits up at the front, and is there like?
Yes, of course. We look the building of the military court. It's a very old building since the French occupation, so it's a very beautiful building. And it's a building of two floors only. And we have a huge courtroom for the military tribunal, where you have a huge number of benches. People can sit and they can watch the audiences. And you have rooms, offices for the investigative judges in the first floor, because every investigative judge should sit in that independent bureau, because our investigations are secret, should be done by secrecy. And then in the second floor, you can see the president of the military court and the Bureau of General Prosecutor. And also you can see the Court of Cassation in the second floor also. So it's a very old building, a very nice building in Beirut, near to the museum.
Okay. And so when you have a case, let's say on terrorism or something like this that you're working on, who is doing the prosecuting? Like, are the prosecutors from the military, or are they from someplace else?
No, by the law, the general prosecutor should be a civil judge, and he has assistant. His assistant can be officers or civil judges. But since we established the military court since 1943, they have been always civil judges who have been working in the Bureau of Prosecution and in the Bureau of the Investigative Judges. So we had never had an officer working in these two bureaux, because it's very sensitive. You know, when you have the prosecution, it's the first, if you want, the first block in the building of prosecution, if you want to call it like a building. So people love to deal with civil judges better than officer judges. So we have always been civil judges. So the prosecution will start by the Bureau of Prosecution or the general prosecutor. And then if the general prosecutor see that this case is well built and there are enough evidence and it should be a huge or a very severe or dangerous case, it should be a felony or a huge misdemeanor, he will send the case to the Bureau of the Investigative Judges. If not, he will send the file case directly to the court. And then we work as any judge in the civil courts. We have the same law. Of course, we have our special law, which is the justice military law, but this law it's only for 170 articles. So it lists only the exceptions that we apply in the military court. Outside these exceptions, we apply the Lebanese law.
Okay. What about the defendant? How do they get represented? Who does somebody get assigned to them from the government, or can they get an external support? How does that work?
Yes, of course. The defendant in the military court have the same rights like the defendant in civil courts. So they have the right to call their parents, they have the right to see their lawyer, they have the right to call anyone, they have the right to see a doctor. And of course, when they come to play in front or to plead in front of the investigative judge, the first right we give it to them is to have a lawyer with them. Some people are very poor, they cannot even pay for a lawyer. So we just go and ask for the bureau for the bar of lawyers to name a lawyer for them who will work for free for them.
I see.
Of course they can plead of all the rights that any defendant have in the civil courts in Lebanon or any place in the world.
Okay. So at trial, especially like if it's a well, I guess just about any case, but if it's, for example, like something that's a bombing or arms or things like this, you must have to deal with forensic experts. And so how do forensic experts get qualified to testify in court?
Well, usually it's very rare to ask for testimony. It didn't happen a lot. What we rely on is the reports that they write.
Okay.
So we can check into the reports. How do they seize the arms? How did they analyze them? What did they discover through this analysis? What did they discover? And it's actually very rare to hear their testimony unless something was very weird or something was very difficult that we could not understand what is written in the report. But this happened for rare times because, their life is threatened most of the time because these people live under threats and the security situation in Lebanon is not very well. So we prefer that these people stay in the shadow and we rely on the report. Anytime we don't understand what is written in the report, we can always ask their help by written, we ask them for help by written
like paperwork request, or communication or
yes. Explain this or explain that or give me more evidence, send me more evidence. Why did you do that? Why did you not do that? So we prefer to deal with written requests better than to bring them to testify in the court.
So what kind of people are the ones that actually come and testify? Is it just eyewitnesses more?
Yes,
things like that?
We can have eyewitnesses. Sometimes we have experts, we have doctors, we have maybe other defendant, maybe people who have witnessed the crime. The testimony is we rely a lot on testimony because or on witnesses because especially in terrorist cases it's very rare that you can collect what we call scientific evidence, especially that in Lebanon we have a huge number of terrorist cases that happened in very short time and they happened in very far areas in Lebanon, and some of these areas are very near to the borders with Syria, and they were all occupied by terrorist group for a long time. Like we want to mention one case like the Battle of Arsal. Arsal is a town that is located on the borders with Syria in the north of Lebanon, northeast of Lebanon. So when this battle happened, it was very difficult for the army to go there and collect evidence. What they rely on it, that they went to the hospitals and search for injured people, and ask them, you got injured where? In the Battle of Arsal, how did you get injured? Who did you see? Who was fighting? Who was shooting? So it was not an easy case. What happens in Lebanon, it's very strange. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world except maybe in Iraq or Yemen. So it's not easy to talk about scientific evidence. Other cases, yes, we could collect scientific evidence, especially if they happened here in Beirut or in towns inside of Lebanon. But everything that was happening on the borders, it was very difficult for us to collect scientific evidence.
Yeah, that makes sense. But is there a central government agency or a pool of experts that are being used that you can ask from? And do they work directly for the court or does what about the defense? Like if they want to bring an expert?
Yeah. First, the terrorist cases in Lebanon are usually the Directorate of Intelligence in the Army are the most specialized agency in Lebanon to work on terrorist cases, not because they are specialized or not because they are well formed than the other agencies in Lebanon, but because they have all the data since 1958. Beside the intelligence in the army, we have the information agency in the ISF and the internal security forces. They are also perfect and excellent in their work. So these two agencies are the first two agencies to work on terrorist cases. Sometimes other agencies can work if the general prosecutor asks them to work. So the general prosecutor have the right to say, I need this agency to work on this case. I want this agency to work on this case. So he pointed which agency he wants to work on it. But we can say that the intelligence of the army and the information directorate in the internal security forces are the first two agencies who has the biggest data and the most specialized persons or staff to work on terrorist cases. So they are the one who have to collect the evidence and bring it in front of the general prosecutor. Then in front of the investigative judges. I don't think the defense can collect evidence because this is not their job in the Lebanese judiciary system. The defense, all what he has to do is to see what he has in the file case. He has the right to see what there are like evidence against him, and he can plead for himself. But of course, he cannot go and collect evidence. I know this happens like in USA or maybe other systems that are what we call in French Anglo-Saxon. So maybe this is happening in other judicial systems, but it's not happening in Lebanon. He can only defend himself. But it's for us to believe at first that he has the right of defense. Second, he has the presumption of innocence. So he is innocent until we can prove that he is guilty.
I see.
So we work on these two bases.
Very interesting. What are some of the like? There's a number. I know there's a number of big cases that you worked on, but what would you say is like one of the biggest cases that you initially what you first worked on as a new judge kind of thing?
Yeah, well, there is. It was in the year 2011 because I started my work in the military court in 2010. And in 2011, I have received a file case about Al-Qaeda that was planning to bomb the school of so the military school. They wanted to bomb the military school, and they said that there is an officer who was with Al-Qaeda. So that was very picky and very, very hard to work with such a case because we had two soldiers in this case, and they said that they have helped Al-Qaeda to bomb the military school. It was picky. Like I was only 1 year in the military court. I had to deal. But in this case, it was very nice that we had, for the first time, we heard about the program that Al-Qaeda was using, which is the secret of Al-Mujahideen. I don't know if you heard about it. It's an email, which is very encrypted. And by then, Al-Qaeda started to use this kind of emailing. So you can send, whenever you send an email, I send to you an email, and you open it. Whenever you open it, the email will vanish. So you are just only the one person who is allowed to read the email. And after that, the email will vanish. So it was very picky in this case to have this way of talking and planning between Al-Qaeda members. Then you have to search for evidence and go to look how did this happen, how did they plan for it, what actually they were planning to do. And what was very, very picky in this case, that after working like 6 months on it, by the end of it, I set the officer free because I could prove that the officer was not guilty. So
interesting.
Yeah,
but you said there were two. You said there were two individuals.
Yes, no, one of them he was guilty, but for a military misdemeanor, not for terrorism.
Okay.
Because whenever you are an officer, there are some things that you cannot talk about. You cannot talk in politics. You cannot go and have friends that might be terrorism or dealing with terrorist groups. So this soldier, he had friends that are in Al-Qaeda. So what we said that you cannot be a soldier and deal with persons that you know that they are terrorists. So he was convicted for that because he did a military misdemeanor. But the student officer, he was set free because I proved that he has nothing to do with the terrorist attack or attempt of attack.
Yeah, you mentioned it took like 6 months, and I was just curious,
Yeah.
like, do many of these cases, because they have such large implications, do they tend to take a lot of time?
Yes, but 6 months is not a big time.
Okay.
No, it's not a big time because you are not dealing with only one defender or one suspect. Sometimes you deal with more than 10. In this case, I had 6 or 7 suspects, if I'm not mistaken. I have worked on the Battle of Arsal, I had 157 suspects in only one file case, 157. So that's what happens in Lebanon. Cases are huge. Cases had a big number of defendants. So taking a 6 month, it's nothing. Because even if you have a little number of suspects dealing with such a sensitive acts, or when you talk about attempting, having a terrorist attack on the school of military, This is something very dangerous and something very huge. So having 6 months to finish by setting someone free and say he's not guilty and save his life after all, because if he is condemned to be a terrorist, you will destroy his life when he is totally innocent. So taking 6 months for me, it's nothing. It's a short time.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. What about, there was another case that you worked on. It was the Sajah, is it al-Dulaimi?
Sajah, yes. Sajah al-Dulaimi is an Iraqi lady. The case of Sajah al-Dulaimi started with an information because the intelligence of the army noticed that someone who was called Abu al-Huda al-Miqati, who is a big terrorist in Lebanon. I don't know if you have heard about the attacks of al-Dulaimi. Al-Dulaimi is a region in the north of Lebanon. In the 1990s, this person announced that he wants to make al-Imara for al-Qaeda in the north of Lebanon, and he was captured by the military and he was put in prison. After he was released from prison, the intelligence of the army noticed that this person, who is very important for al-Qaeda in Lebanon, has interest in one woman who was living in Lebanon, and they didn't know who is that woman. But they noticed that he always bring money to her, he always bring food to her, he always take care of the houses where she lives, and he keeps on moving her houses. So she didn't live in one house. So this was very picky for them, and they wondered who could be that woman. After they did their investigation, they knew that this woman is the mother of Abu Khalid al-Muhajir. Abu Khalid is a leader in Daesh or ISIS in Syria. And then Abu Khalid moved to Al-Mosul in Iraq. And then by following who was the family of Abu Khalid, who was his sister, who was his father, who is his sister, we discovered that Abu Khalid had two sisters. One of them who made an attempt of a terrorist attack by suicide bombing in Iraq against the American troops. But she was captured before she could suicide herself in them. So she was prisoned in Iraq. Then we know that the father of Abu Khalid is prisoned in Syria because also he made a terrorist attack against the troops in Syria, the Syrian military. Then we noticed, or the intelligence noticed, that this woman now have another woman who is living with her, and she might be her daughter. And this woman, the second one, had 4 children with her. Okay, 3 children with her, 2 boys and 1 girl. After that, they noticed that this new lady who came with these 3 children was contacting a person named Kamal. Kamal is a terrorist. He was convicted to be a terrorist, and he was in the prison because he had been in Fatah al-Islam. Fatah al-Islam is a terrorist group who had occupied the camp of Palestinian refugees in the north of Lebanon. And they have had a battle with the army in 2007, where we had more than 100 martyrs for the army. So it was all these things showed that there is something weird happening. And then they noticed that the friend of Kamal is someone named Lu'ay, who is also a terrorist who was in Syria fighting with Jund al-Sham. Jund al-Sham is also a terrorist group that was fighting in Syria. He is one of the affiliated groups with Al-Qaeda. So they start like following this lady to see where is she going, where is she coming. Then they arrested her on her way back from the Syrian borders to a place in the north of Lebanon, in the Biqa, called Shtura. There in Shtura, you have where you go and you can rent a car to go to Syria. So when they captured these 3 persons, Kamal, Lu'ay, and this lady. We discovered that this lady, her name is Sajah al-Dulaimi. This lady is actually the wife of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who is the leader of ISIS. How did we know that this lady is the wife of Abu Bakr? Of course, we had some information from Iraq, intelligence information, but Sajah had a paper with her. In this paper, there is someone, a man, by the words he were using in this letter, showed that this man is a very important person because he kept telling her that I'm in a big danger. I cannot go and see you. I will send one of the brothers to bring you here. I need to see my daughter. Hajar is my daughter. So Hajar was the name of the third kid who was with this lady. When we asked Sajah, who is this girl? She said, she's my sister. So she didn't confess that she is her daughter. And when we saw the ID of the little girl, actually she is the sister of Sajah. But what did Sajah do? Sajah was in Iraq. When she was in Iraq, she was married to an officer in the Iraqi military when Saddam was in the power in Iraq. Her husband, her first husband, was in what they called the resistance against the American troops, and he was killed. So her family obliged her to marry another man because they said you cannot stay without marriage. And she had 2 boys from her first husband, the 2 boys who were with her. So they obliged her to marry a man. This man is from As-Samurra, and he is a teacher. He is an English teacher. And actually, Abu Bakr was an English teacher, and he's from As-Samurra. So Sajah, because she didn't love this man and she didn't want to stay married to him, she left him and she went to her parents. When did she leave her? Because she discovered that she is pregnant and she didn't want to give him any children. So she went to her parents, she gave birth to this little girl, and she asked her father and mother to register this girl on their name, not hers and her husband. So now Hajar, the small daughter, is the sister of Sajah by records, but she's not her sister in reality. So what the intelligence do is that we asked the intelligence in Iraq to send us the DNA of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. And since Abu Bakr was a prisoner in Abu Ghraib, so they had his DNA. So they sent it to us, and we analyzed the DNA of Hajar and Sajah. We proved that Hajar is really the daughter of Sajah, and she is at the same time the daughter of Sajah and Abu Bakr. So now we proved that this woman is the wife of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Plus, there is a very important information that, if you remember, we had nuns that were kidnapped by Daesh, the nuns of Ma'lula. If you heard about Ma'lula, is a city, the first Christian city in the Middle East, and is located in the north of Syria. So the Daesh or ISIS kidnapped many nuns from there, from a church. And Lebanon was leading the talks to bring these nuns back to their towns, to Ma'lula. So all the talks that were happening stopped many times. And every time we stopped the talking between the Lebanese government or some of the Lebanese agencies and Daesh or al-Nusra, they were saying, we have an important lady that we want to put her out of prison. Who was this lady? This lady was Sajah. Because at that time, Sajah was imprisoned in Syria. How did she come to Syria? She decided to bring her 3 children, not by plane, not by a ship, just coming by land, by cars or by buses from Iraq to Syria. You know, I'm a mother. I have 3 children. I don't go to the mall by myself with 3 children. I always need the help of someone. Sajah could come with 3 children from Iraq to Syria. Whenever she arrived to Syria, the intelligent Syrian captured her because she was talking with her father all the way from Iraq to Syria to tell him, wait me here and here. So they arrested her father, they arrested her, and they put her in prison for 6 months. So the negotiation with al-Nusra and Daesh to release the nuns of Ma'lula stopped many times because they always asked to set Sajah free from the Syrian prisons. So after the Syrian authorities accepted to set Sajah free, we could take the nuns from al-Nusra or from Daesh, I don't know where exactly they were, and we sent them back to Ma'lula. Then what happened? That Sajah entered Lebanon even without the acceptance of the Lebanese government and the acceptance of the Lebanese agencies, because al-Nusra and Daesh obliged us to let her enter by illegal ways to Lebanon.
Okay.
So she entered to Lebanon. She went to Arsal, which is, I told you, this is a border city between Lebanon and Syria. And by that time, Arsal was occupied by Daesh. She went there. She made false statement to the leader of the municipality, to the chief of the municipality in Arsal. She told him, my name is such, this is not this my kid, like his name is Muhammad, she named him Samer or something. She gave to her children different names. She had papers now that she is Syrian and that she is refugee in Lebanon, and she was moving in Lebanon with these incorrect papers. And then, I don't know if you know this information, but all the terrorist groups have a very important, they care about family ties. So whenever a woman, whenever a husband dies, the woman should marry another terrorist member of their groups, so they keep the bonding between them, because they believe that the mother is the one who give these strong ties between the children. So because now Sajah entered to Lebanon, she was married to Kamal, who was a prisoner through Facebook.
Oh, really?
They met him on Facebook, and they made their marriage contract through Facebook, of course, by someone, a leader in Daesh or something. I don't know, because they have their own sheikh and they have their own beliefs. And when Kamal went out of prison, they married legally. She went with Kamal and Lu'ay to go to Daesh in Syria, and then they were arrested, like I told you, by the Lebanese intelligence. And it was me who did the investigation with her. But I interrogate her. She's a very smart lady. She's a very strong lady. She was not afraid. She's very beautiful. She's very smart. I was looking to a woman who I was thinking, I'm a mother. I cannot take 3 children and move by land from a country to another, from Iraq to Lebanon. It's a very, very, very far distance. She came to Syria. She went to the Syrian prisons for 6 months. It's not easy. Then she came to Lebanon. She did all this. She was brave enough to go to Irsal. It's a very dangerous city. She was very, I don't know, she's brave. Of course, she's a criminal, but she's brave to go and give false information, to have this false document. And then she went to Nahr al-Barid. Nahr al-Barid is a camp also for the Palestinian refugees. You cannot go to this camp unless you are a Palestinian. So she also used a fake ID that she was Palestinian, and she could go so she can go to the camp of Nahr al-Barid. So this lady was arrested. Of course, I accused her for having the attempt to join Daesh in Syria. But after, like, I don't know, maybe 1 year of being in prison, she was released, because we had many soldiers who were kidnapped by Daesh and al-Nusra. I don't know if you heard about it. After the Battle of Arsal, we had like 19 soldiers who were kidnapped by Daesh and al-Nusra, so we had to bring them back. We had many negotiations, and also the first condition was set Sajah free from the prison so we can give you back your soldier, and that's what happened.
Wow, Sajah, that's a fascinating story.
But she continued to come to the court, huh? She didn't run away. She continued to come to the court, and she accepted the judgment that was released by then.
I see. So I have 2 questions, and they're unrelated.
Actually, it's a long story, but
no, it's a long story, but it helps me understand sort of the system and stuff. And one of the questions I had is, in terms of the investigation, how involved do you get in the investigation part as a judge? Because you're directly interrogating or speaking to witnesses, and so you do a lot of the investigation yourself.
Yes. That's the difference between the general prosecutor in Lebanon and the investigative judge. The general prosecutor in Lebanon can ask the agencies to do the investigation instead of him. This is written by the law. He can go by himself and interrogate the suspect or the suspect person, or he can ask any agency he chooses. It depends on the case or on the type of the case. He can just ask the intelligence of the army, the sector of or the directorate of information in the ISF, maybe the general security, ask them this and this question. It's always by the phone. He can ask them what did they do, what did they say, and he can give his orders by phone. While the investigative judge has to do all the interrogation by himself. It's by the law. So I have my bureau, every suspect. So if I have 100 suspects, every suspect should come to my office. I should see him. He should stand in front of me. I should tell him what are his rights. The right of defense, the right to have a lawyer, the right to contact his family, the right to have a doctor. He had to know all his rights, and I will tell him what did the general prosecution accused him of. I will tell him, you are accused to this and this and this. This is a felony. This is a misdemeanor. You might stay arrested for such time. You might be convicted for such time. I have to explain for him. Then I start to ask my question. And we have like a paper that we write on it all the question. We use the letter sin. Sin in Arabic means question. Jim, it's in Arabic, means his response or what did he reply. So it should be written in a very, very obvious way. So anyone who will read this paper will understand what did I ask him and how did he reply to this question. Of course, instead of the interrogation, which is very important, if the investigative judge doesn't do this interrogation, everything is not correct. He has to do the interrogation by law. I have to ask him because he has the right to defend himself. Also, with the interrogation, I can ask the agencies who did what we call the primary investigation. I can ask them to help me. For example, you captured his phone, but you did not tell me what did you find in his phone. Go and check his phone and tell me what did you find in it. Maybe I can ask them. Maybe I can ask them, give me the full identity of this person because I need to ask him to come to court. Tell me where this person lives because I need to ask him to come. I can ask them anything I believe that would help me to build my case. And the job of the investigative judge, not only to find the evidence that goes against the suspect, he has his job, or he should also search for the evidence that could go with the suspect, that could help him to prove that he is innocent. So that's why I told you before, we don't have a big role for the defense in the Lebanese system, because it's my job to find in the same time that the evidence with and against him.
Yeah, I guess that's the big difference of the it's not just judge, it's an investigative judge. And that's a very important word. Very different than what happens here.
Yes, we have something we say here in Lebanon that general prosecution and the defendant stay on the same level in front of the investigative judge. So both of them should fight in front of me. The general prosecutor should prove that he built a good case and strong case, and he should give me the evidence. And also the defendant has the right to defend himself. That's why sometimes I close the case because I say that the general prosecution didn't work to find me enough evidence, so I will send this person to court. So it's me who decide if this person should go to court or not. Of course, the general prosecution has the right to appeal my decision. But after all, maybe I will succeed to prove that this person is innocent after all.
Yeah, interesting. The other question that I had in your talks, because you mentioned obviously Lebanon being surrounded by Syria on the north and the east is very important. So the borders. So I was thinking about two things. One is the how people or how terrorists maybe cross in and out. Like, for example, you mentioned about the lady who illegally had to get inside. Yeah. So how is that controlled? And the other thing that I wanted to ask was participation of Syrian government in investigations and things like that. Do you have any cooperation across these borders?
Yes. First, we have a huge borders between Lebanon and Syria, starting from the east to the north. It's a huge borders. Second, the borders are not well
guarded or controlled.
Yes, or controlled. We had the help of the EU, the European Union. We had the help. Also, we have the help of maybe Germany or something. We have the Lebanese troops. I think the general security and the army and the internal security who are supervising the borders. But I can tell you it's not enough. We know it's not enough because we have many ways of smuggling. And the people there who are living in these areas, they don't accept even the presence of the army. They say, this is how we live. We live by smuggling. So it's not easy. There are some political issues also. So yes, we have all the terrorists who are in Lebanon. Some were entered by legal ways. They came here and then they were affiliated with Daesh through maybe social media or something. But the majority of them came to Lebanon in illegal ways. The borders are huge. It's not well supervised. It's not well controlled. With the Syrian authorities, yes, we have we have good relation with Syria, and we have also a convention with Syria that we should give her, and she gives us all information about terrorism or any penal case in Lebanon or in Syria. So they are helping us, we are helping them, because also we have many Lebanese fighters that are in Syria. They went to Syria to fight with al-Nusra or Daesh, and they went to Iraq. Also, we have very good relationship with al-Iraq, with the intelligence of al-Iraq. They give us any information we need, and also we give them any information they need. Lebanon has always proved that he is always willing and open to give any information that could help to counter terrorism all over the world.
Yeah, very interesting. I wanted to ask you about, for example, any teaching or anything that you do to maybe some of the younger people that are coming into the judicial system, whether it's through partnerships with other universities or other things like that. Do you get involved with other students and things like that?
Actually, students in the college, I did it once with the British University in Cairo, with Amity Law School in India and Australia. And I participate with a lot of workshops because the Iraqi judges can come here to Lebanon to practice on countering terrorism, because I would say, we are the best. Lebanese are the best, because even that we don't have enough stuff, we don't have enough equipment, but we are fighting and we are countering terrorism as much as we can. And Lebanese judiciary and the Lebanese agencies have proved that they are doing their best. So the Iraqi can come here to practice with us, and I have participated in many workshops to give them all the information that I have built and all the knowledge I have built through these 12 years working in the military court and on terrorist cases and financing of terrorism also.
Okay. And you've published some things, or you've been involved with some different publications. There was one I was going to ask you about. It had to do with the value of confessions to the scientific evidence. Actually, it's value of confessions in parallel to scientific evidence during the investigations of terrorism suspects. Could you tell me something about why that paper?
Well, that paper was, I made that paper to address it to the Iraqi judges who came to Lebanon to practice here in Lebanon. Because, I was telling you before that whenever we have a terrorist case in Lebanon, we have a huge number of suspects. We have a huge number of persons who are arrested. And the criminal attack usually happens in borders town like in Arsal, or even in places that were occupied by terrorist groups, or maybe that happens in Syria. So it's not always easy to go and have the scientific evidence like we would love to have. We cannot always seize the weapons. We cannot always have the DNA analysis. So it's not, the picture is very beautiful, but the reality is very ugly. So a huge number of cases, of terrorist cases in Lebanon, was built on confessions of the suspect. Usually, especially whenever we have an information from the Syrian intelligence or the Iraqi intelligence, this is not written in the paper or in the report, but I know that whenever you arrest a person who just came into Lebanon like 2-3 days, and you tell me that this person was involved in a terrorist attack in Iraq or in Syria, I will directly know that the Lebanese intelligence forces did not know this from nowhere. They know it from an information coming from the intelligence directory in Syria or in Iraq. So usually we don't have the scientific evidence. What we was relying on is the confession of this suspect. What happens that this person in the primary investigation, he would say, yes, I did this and that, I did this and that. Whenever he comes to the investigative judge, he will be free. He will be sitting in a bureau or an office. He had AC. He can drink water. If he's tired of standing up, he can sit down. So he would tell me, the first thing he would tell me, no, I didn't do anything of that. I was beaten up. I was threatened. They tortured me. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. So it was not easy to deal with this. What makes my job easy a little bit, that I can always say that the primary investigation is something very, I should believe in them. I should trust them. So whenever I have a primary investigation where a person confesses of doing this and that, I can send his file to the court. I'm not pleased to do this. Of course, I prefer to have scientific evidence. The problem was that when you go to the court should be 100% sure that this person committed the crime. So what happened is that the court give innocence to many persons or set them free, saying not guilty for many persons who were really terrorists, but we could not prove that they were terrorists or they committed terrorist attacks because we didn't have scientific evidence. Many of these persons, after they left prison, they have committed attacks, terrorist attacks against Lebanon. I can mention, I don't know if you have heard about bombing of the Iranian embassy in Lebanon. This person was arrested and he was set free because we didn't have enough evidence against him. I don't know if you have heard also about a person who is called Abdulrahman Mabsout. Also, Abdulrahman was in Syria. After he came here, he was imprisoned only for 1 year, also because we didn't have enough evidence against him. And when he went out of prison, he had made a suicide attack against the police. So this was a big deal. Now things they are better. We are able to collect scientific evidence because first, the number of terrorist attacks are becoming smaller and smaller. With the coronavirus pandemic, since 2019 until 2021, we didn't have a huge number. Even we didn't have many people who were traveling from Lebanon to Syria or from Syria to Lebanon because all the borders were closed all around the world. And now, because also we are proving ourselves, we are working more on having scientific evidence. We have the help of UNODC, we have the help of foreign embassies, France, Australia, Germany, the United States, the EU in general. So we are working, things are becoming better. But I would mention something. Even if I, as investigative judge, I have only a confession of the suspect, this should not stop me from searching for other evidence. Maybe I could not find scientific evidence, but at least maybe I can find a witness. So I should build a good case and I should send it to the court to be a good case. Right. So either I do this or I set the person free. So it depends from a case to another. But of course, confession is not a good. It's not a good evidence. Even if you open the Lebanese law, the penal procedure law in Lebanon, you will not find an article who says confession is above all evidence. This is not mentioned in the Lebanese law. So confession is nothing, because even a person confess, if you can find a scientific evidence that proves that this confession is incorrect, you have to take the scientific evidence and not the confession. Because you know that some people sometimes confess that they commit a crime, not because they are afraid from us or from the agencies. Maybe they are afraid from other people who threaten them or ask them to take the responsibility instead of them. So this is happening especially for the crimes who are committed inside the prisons. Right.
So what about, because you did another publication where you talked about the appeals process, and I didn't ask about that, but how does the appeals process work in a case like once you make a final decision and you say, okay, this is what happened, how does that work?
Yeah. Well, now you will see a very, very complex and complicated Lebanese judiciary system. You know, because the parliament in Lebanon, I told you, the military court was built first to be a court who only prosecute military crimes. But after that, when the authority of the military tribunal or the military court becomes huger and huger, the parliament decided that we should give to this court more civil appeal. So you will be shocked if you know that the decisions of me, who is an investigative judge working in the military court, are appealed in front of the judiciary justice, in front of a civil court. This civil court is named the Court of Cassation in the judiciary justice, okay, in the civil courts. So if I decide, for example, there was a file that is sent to me by the prosecutor, and he tells me that this person should be accused for such or such crime. Then I decide that no, this person should set free because he did not commit the crime or because the evidence were not enough. The general prosecutor has the right to appeal my decision in front of the Court of Cassation in judiciary justice, in the civil justice. So maybe the Court of Cassation will say, yes, the investigative judge was right. Maybe she will say, no, he was wrong. He didn't work enough on his case, and she can break my decision and send this person to the court, but to the military court. Okay, so it's a bit complicated. It's a bit complicated. There is other decisions that the investigative judges make. They go also by appealing of the general prosecutor to the Court of Cassation in the military court. So we have a Court of Cassation in the military court, and we have a Court of Cassation in the judiciary justice. So it's a little bit complicated, but it gives a little of civilism to the military justice.
Ah, interesting.
Just to prove that the investigative judge is not only a military person, there is a civil justice who is supervising his work.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've been doing this for some time now, so you're not a newbie anymore. You've got a lot of experience in a lot of different cases. So what is next for you? Like, what kinds of things are you working on now? Are you doing anything academic? Are you working on what kinds of things interest you in the judicial system?
I have finished my master's degree in February 2021. My thesis was about the electronic terrorism.
Cyber terrorism?
Yes, cyber terrorism. And now I am working on my PhD. I have finished my first year because in the university where I'm having my PhD, you should have your first year, you should have courses and you should do your exams. And if you pass this exam, you can apply for a thesis. Now I'm working on my thesis.
Oh, interesting.
And hopefully I will finish in 2 years.
Now, the cyber terrorism project, was that something that you chose because you got involved with it on a case already?
Yes. I wanted to work on this subject because I have struggled with the cyber terrorism through my work because we don't have a good law in Lebanon. I told you the law of terrorism dated January 11, 1958. This law was never we didn't have a new law. Even we didn't work on the old law to make it similar to what's happening. Now the terrorist group, they don't have like to go and practice in a military camp or in a camp in Iraq, or they can just go to the internet where they have their websites, and you can practice how to make a bomb while you are sitting behind your computer. So we have to have a new law in Lebanon, and that we were facing in our work. And many of recruiting terrorism is happening through Facebook or happening through Telegram. While you go and search in Lebanese law, you will not find this. You will not find a law who is talking about recruiting through social media. So that's why I chose to work on this topic, because it gives us hard time, even to work with the evidence that were taken from a phone, from a computer, or taken from social media. We actually, in 2018, we had a law number 81 in Lebanon that we were waiting that this law will talk about cyber terrorism, but unfortunately it did not talk about it at all. It just talked about electronic commerce and personal data on internet.
I see.
We are still waiting to have a new law, especially for praising for terrorism, because we have many cases. We have a huge number of cases in the military court where a person have on his own account on Facebook, where he goes and just say, I love Daesh, or I love al-Nusra, I love al-Qaeda, and he puts nice comments and say, yes, they are the one who apply the rules of Allah and such words. So these persons are arrested, but actually they are just saying their opinion. And in the Lebanese constitution, we respect the freedom of opinion. So I cannot arrest these people for just saying this word. But if I have a law who says that praising terrorism is a crime, then I can arrest such people. And this caused us big problems in Lebanon, because these people, although they show that they are very dangerous, but we could not arrest them. And by the end, they finished by committing really terrorist attacks.
Yeah.
So that's what it made a big problem for me, because I face this problem in my work. I can see that this person is dangerous, but I can do nothing, because I don't have the appropriate law.
Right. And so in writing this thesis, your master's thesis, is that something that you maybe passed on to a few people in parliament to say, hey, look, we need some laws here? Has anybody looked at it? Or?
Maybe when Lebanon becomes like Europe, they can read my book and the law of 2018, they worked on him in the parliament for 10 years. And after 10 years, it was empty.
Yeah.
It's an empty law.
Yeah, it's a long time.
From my point of view, of course, maybe others have another point of view, but I'm talking from my point of view, because I was waiting that after 10 years, maybe we could have a law that talks about cyber terrorism, because they know the huge numbers of cases that we have in the military court. They should know. This is their job to know. The parliament should know what the judiciary is facing. If they don't know, so they are not doing their job. I don't know if they have read it. I'm not willing to talk with them because.
Yeah, I understand. No problem. Well, look, Najat, we're getting on in time here, and I don't want to keep you too much, but I just want to say, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, is it okay if I show your LinkedIn profile up on the screen?
Yes,
that's okay for people to get a hold of you? You're there on public? Okay, so yeah, if they have any questions for you, you never know. Okay.
Yeah, I will be pleased.
Well, look, I want to say thank you so much. It's great when people come on and they're very passionate about what they do. And it definitely shows, like, in your work, you seem like you're still, very, very passionate about what you do and very involved.
Yes,
and I
love
really
my work. Instead of everything, I love my work. I love being a judge. I have never felt sorry for like 1 second to be a judge.
You wake up fresh in the morning, ready to go to work.
I love my country. It's a very beautiful country.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Despite everything.
Yes. And well, that's wonderful. And I appreciate you sharing everything with us. It's been very educational for me and doing research and learning about the system. It's complex. I will say things are complicated, but somehow they work. And that's the important thing. So
yes, we are managing.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much. And hey, we'll see you next time. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.